Mr. Jordan, you will get the first question started. Since 2010, when the Republicans took over the legislature, North Carolina has rebounded in what Governor McCrory calls the Carolina comeback. Fastest growing state economy in the region with a 4.7% unemployment rate. Unfortunately, there have been some embarrassments too. There have been several court challenges with gay marriage bans, voter ID, and other voter laws overturned by the courts as well, including court-ordered legislative redistricting changes. Even more embarrassing is the fallout from the passage of HB 2. What can you provide to improve the image of North Carolina?
Well, thank you for that question. Those are all important issues, and I'm glad you started with the Carolina comeback, because we have had a tremendous economic improvement since we went into office in 2011 when the legislature became Republican. We've had increased economic development, increased competitiveness in tax rates and business competitiveness, attractiveness to the nation. But there are some other issues, and the ones that you mentioned were ones that judicial activist courts have interfered with, common sense ideas such as a voter ID, just to see who you are. Our current system right now is simply provide a name and an address that matches the name, and you can vote. And the opportunity is rife there for fraudulent voting. That was overturned by an activist judicial branch. Marriage amendment, it was a common sense issue that passed over 60% in North Carolina to put it in our Constitution. And again, activist judges decided they knew better than the elected officials of the citizens of the state and decided to overturn that. I don't think that these are issues that really should be left in the hands of the courts. I think should be left in the hands of the elected officials, and we will continue working on those issues and providing legal counsel to fight those issues, since our current Attorney General running for governor has not done his job as the attorney for the state. So we will continue working on these issues and get these common sense issues in.
Okay, Ms. Ballard?
I'd just like to reiterate that North Carolina has grown. Household incomes have increased. They're up over the past few years, even though media may not necessarily communicate that. But since 2011, over $3 billion in tax relief for families and small businesses. And I think one thing that we can do to continue to get the message out and to get this to change our image is we as citizens need to continue to just talk to one another. We need to kind of get that story out, share our story, kind of oversaturate our district, our counties. There's a lot of good stories out there to be told. And I know that the different pieces and topics of legislation that have been going through and that the courts have decided, I think, again, it's just putting us back in, it's putting the topic back into the hands of the people. And I think we have a story to tell, and we need to just be a little bit more forceful and aggressive in how we get the story out. There's a lot of good to be told.
Mr. Sherman?
Thank you for putting on this forum, inviting me all the way up to Mount Colwell. I love this county for a long time, coming here a long time. One of 5 in this district. I think it is sad to see what's happened to the reputation of North Carolina in the last 6 years. The supposed Carolina comeback is part of a national trend where we've seen increases across the country, improvements that were brought about after Democrats took over the White House, and that seems to be a general trend. I think one of the things that we need to do is to address we've created a problem for ourselves. Mr. Jordan doesn't seem to think that the courts are doing their job, and maybe forgetting the 3 branches of government, and they are doing their job. They're trying to keep us in a constitutional basis. Sorry. Oh. Wow. Sorry.
Ms. Counts?
I want to thank you also for having us here, and I want to thank everyone for being our audience tonight. I have as my 3 big issues education, environment, and jobs. Those are concerns that I've had for some time, especially in the last 6 years, and that's really why I'm running. My mission in life has always been helping to improve the lives of people. That's what I'm all about. I have seen our state go backwards, 50 years at least, in the last 6 years. And so I want to do something about that. I really believe that things have not gotten, we haven't had that comeback, really. And so I'm looking forward to that.
I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for putting on this session tonight and also for inviting me. The Carolina comeback has been visible for the past few years. But when I moved here 20 years ago, we had high taxes and a very vibrant economy. But over the next 12 years, we kept most of those taxes and the economy went down and down, especially for the medium-sized and smaller businesses. The past few years, the change in legislature and the governor has definitely turned it around. The taxes are lower, especially the corporate tax and the private or personal income tax. And we are bringing back in some jobs. But we have a lot of economic development, not economic growth. Economic development is moving dirt, putting in pipelines and building new plants. And after 4 or 5 years trying to put a job in them, we need economic growth. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Ballard, you'll start off with this next question. Unfortunately, the media, including my industry, TV, has done a terrible job explaining exactly what is HB2. The so-called bathroom bill originally prevented people experiencing discrimination from seeking relief in state courts. That's been amended. It also prevented local municipalities from making decisions related to minimum wage and discrimination, effectively blocking local decision-making. We've seen some loss of industry and also some opportunities for entertainment and sports value because of HB2. What should be done about it?
Well, yesterday, in fact, the Secretary of Commerce said that the HB2 has not affected the growth of our economy in the state one iota. I think sometimes there's a media misperception out there that we're losing all this business, but in fact, we're actually gaining business. In September, we've had 9,700 jobs added to the state, into the economy. So I think it's important to kind of balance what's been lost versus what is in addition to coming in, which we don't often hear about. I think that the reversal of the state court action that we voted on in the last session, still affirms the actual bathroom part of the law while, calling or meeting the calls of both the community and the business as well. So I just think that what we hear in the media is not often what is actually in reality going on within the state.
Sure.
Having worked with individuals around the world, I'm very aware of the fact that not only is our reputation suffering locally and nationally, but also internationally because of HB2. An unnecessary Trojan horse to put into place restriction on practice of local government. And this from a group that claims to be about small government. The thing we need to do is we must repeal it. Because as you outlined, it's not just about bathrooms. It's not helped us. We've recently heard the loss of another 400 jobs. This is not who we are. And it will not stand up in court. When we take $500 million out of the emergency fund in order, $500,000 to fund defense of this bill, it's just yet another example of bad laws causing more problems for us. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson.
So Republicans said this bill was about public safety and bathrooms. As a mother and a grandmother, I understand wanting to protect their children, but that's not what this bill is about. This bill is costing us jobs and hurting our economy. Independent research from UCLA suggests that HB2 could cost North Carolina's economy at least billions of dollars, B as in billions. I want to focus on growing our economy and bringing jobs to this area. HB2 has made it harder to do that and has hurt our reputation, making it more difficult to bring jobs here in the future. It even cost us the NCAA and the ACC championship games. It's beyond time that everyone come together and find a common sense compromise.
Mr. C.
HB2 is an interesting set of bill, but it needs to be repealed. Just simply cancel it and start over. Little kids have a do-over, and that's what we need on this. You need to sit down, take some public input, some input from the various lobbying groups, and write a bill that covers just the 3 different ideas of what was covered in HB2. And there were 3 essentially unrelated issues in it. So we need a do-over. We need the repeal of it so that the publicity of North Carolina having that bill, we can simply say it's no longer a bill. It's no longer a law. And we can get past this. It's not about bathrooms. When you sit down and read the actual text of the bills, it says take the signs off the walls. And oh, by the way, if we're doing business in Charlotte, no matter where you are, take the signs off of your bathrooms, which is outside the range of what the city of Charlotte should be able to do.
Mr. Jordan.
Thank you. Yes, this has been an issue that's put us into a lot of negative light in the nation, and I don't know why the city of Charlotte decided that we need to get in the middle of this kind of a ridiculous issue. Common sense that you have separate men's and women's restrooms and changing rooms and locker rooms. The city of Charlotte decided to enter into some kind of agenda where they wanted to allow human physical adult males to change in the same locker room with young children, young girls, like my 8-year-old daughter. That's why I voted for the bill, to stop that. The city of Charlotte was overreaching in many different ways, not only that way, but also with the rest of the bill about having local minimum wages and some other things, because those are things that our state constitution requires be consistent statewide. That's why those provisions were put into the bill. In fact, WRAL, which has been completely critical of everything that we do down in Raleigh, actually had an article that said, while $500 million is a significant figure that's harmed businesses directly affected by cancellations, it's a tiny fraction of the state's overall economy. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, our gross state domestic product was $510 billion. So even at $500 million, HB2's impact will be about 0.1%.
All right. Mr. Sherwood will start off with this next question, and I promise no more HB2. Which entity, the local board of education or the General Assembly, should be in charge of setting the start and end dates for local school systems, and why? And if you believe the General Assembly should be in charge of setting the school calendar start and end dates, is there any additional flexibility that should be allowed within the boundaries of the start and end dates?
To be honest, that's not a topic I've given a lot of thought to. I know I lived 30 years in Texas, and the legislature had to intervene because schools might have started in July because football practice couldn't start until 2 weeks before school. So the teams kept wanting to get an advantage, so they had to step in. And I don't know whether that's true in North Carolina or not. So there has to be a reasonable balance. Generally speaking, I think the local school board should be in charge of their calendars because they have local situations to deal with. For instance, here in Watauga, I'm sure there's an interest in coordinating the university calendar with the school calendar locally so that parents can have a reasonable opportunity to take vacation and so on. So I think that another fact is that we need to think about the option of year-round schools, making better use of the public space and so on. Okay.
Ms. Counts?
I grew up in the mountains of Virginia, about 2.5 hours from here. Climate was very much like the climate is here in Watauga County. And I believe that the school start and completion should be left up to the local government or the local school board. And I think that there can be all kinds of coordinations with the university. We have a lot of snow days, and so that needs to be taken into consideration. So it really should be a local issue, in my opinion.
Mr. Cecil?
And very simply, a local issue, local school board. I would seriously want to minimize the state influence and federal influence on our local education. Parents and teachers and educators locally know what the local kids need. At one point, school date was important because it was determined when you could get the tobacco crop in because the kids were out working in the field. That's no longer basically one of the problems. But locally, they can set their dates, they know what they need, they know how many days they have to do.
Mr. Jordan?
This is the time when we really need more than 1 minute to answer questions, because this is, again, a very complicated issue that I had no idea would be so controversial. But until HB2 came up, school calendars were pretty much controversial down in Raleigh. My first term, I did what my predecessor did, which was put in a waiver so that Ashe and Watauga counties could start earlier, because in the past 10 years, the years when Watauga was not at the top of the list for missing days because of school, Ashe was. So this district was heavily hit by that. We got that waiver through the first year. But then some personalities on the, unfortunately, the other side of the other chamber, not the other side of the aisle, but the other chamber, decided that we were going to go with a group called Save Our Schools that wanted to hold the summer open for tourism down at the coast, for camps, a lot of other things, which is a good issue to have, but they have a lock on it now, and so we've not been able to get waivers in for the past 2 terms. It's something I'm going to continue working on, and we have had some changes in personalities and some of the elected officials that we might actually be able to start getting some waivers again. Ms. Bowden?
I know Scott Elliott is here this evening, and just again, thank you so much for your leadership in the county. Scott and I have actually talked about this a little bit as well, and I do think there needs to be some flexibility up here in this district. I have five counties that I cover, and that's Allegheny, Ashe, Avery, Watauga, and Caldwell. So I do think there needs to be serious consideration. I haven't been in previous sessions in the legislature where this has come up for discussion, but it is something that I'm going to be focused on and continue, hopefully, conversation with Dr. Elliott.
All right, Sioux County, you'll get the next question. Watauga County has a terrible road problem, particularly in the western part of the county. 421 from the western side of Boone to the Tennessee border is just a massive traffic jam. Would you be an advocate for Watauga County's roads, traffic control, and infrastructure?
Okay. I know that a few years ago, we had a series of meetings about doing a beltway around Boone, because that is a big issue with the traffic. And that is a local issue also, and I think that a lot of people who lived in the communities and the areas where that beltway was designed protested. So I think there would need to be a lot of communication, a lot of meetings, and this is a local problem here. So I would be for participating in something like this, yes.
Mr. Cecil?
We're talking roads that are scheduled, built, and controlled basically by the NCDOT. And the biggest problem they have is they take 20 years to do anything, 25 more typically. So bypasses or loops around town are critical. The ones they have in Asheville, the ones that are just now being completed in Charlotte, which by the way were planned for being almost shovel-ready 20 years ago, are making big differences in their traffic. And it's only by getting new roads built that can relieve the burden on the existing roads that you can then bring them up to standards and get them repaired.
Mr. Jordan?
The whole time I've been in Raleigh, I've been a strong advocate for our constituents and their road needs. I've gotten lots of calls from both counties about roads that need improvement. I've worked with the DOT on the 421 widening, the 221 widening, the 321 project that continues to go on in Blowing Rock and needs to finish up soon. helping get the town of Blowing Rock money for their main street, the town of West Jefferson money for their main street. And the DOT, the best thing that we've done with DOT is the governor put into effect a plan where road improvements and construction are being based on numbers and the data and where the traffic issues are. So those are, instead of the politically powerful legislators getting everything they want, particularly out east, you see lots of beautiful roads that don't go anywhere. When we have problems, we have data that shows that we need improvements, we need widenings, we can get those. And that's what DOT is focusing on now. They listen to the legislators we call in. On this 221 widening, I've gotten several different constituents the ability to talk to DOT engineers and explain situations. So I'm all for the state taking a look at all of the problems that we have in our district.
Ms. Ballard?
I'm definitely, it's important for our state legislators to have a very solid relationship with DOT. And I think the better that relationship is, that the more effective our construction projects can be completed in a timely manner. So I do think it boils down to relationships and to that effectiveness. I will say one concern that I will have, or something that I continually keep in mind, is we have a lot of businesses up here with trucking companies and trucking services. So for me, it's important that we have highways and roads that are safe and that are wide enough. I mean, I know Holler and Green actually has nearly 40 trucks a week that come through the district as a whole. So that's, you know, from 321 to 221, 421. So I think it's important for me to keep in mind that our road projects, our construction projects, also just not affect not only our citizens and our families, but also just the businesses and the amount of goods and services that come through here.
Mr. Sherwood?
North Carolina has a great history in road construction. They've had an initiative. I mean, I'm sure many of you in here remember the initiative to pave all the state roads. This is a great thing. We've done it. I'm very much for better roads. But it's important to keep in mind that it's not only making the bypasses on, but we need to maintain our infrastructure, which is critical to all of us. So we all drive on these roads, and the bridges and so on are not being maintained as they need to be. So we need to make sure that we're not only providing these new opportunities to relieve traffic, but also maintaining the state, the quality, the safety of bridges and overpasses and that sort of thing.
All right, Mr. Cecil, you'll take this question. Small business owners continually complain about unnecessary and odious regulation. What do you see that could be streamlined or eliminated as far as regulations mandated by the state?
One of the problems that small business have is the level of regulations and things that they have to comply with from the first day they start is difficult. You start your business, the first thing you do is about $1,000 to get the company incorporated. You turn around and the state is wanting anywhere from $50 to $200 for various fees. And then in a lot of cases, the cities have their own requirements. Up until 4 years ago, they had a law that gave a small business, less than 5 employees, some exemptions up to $50,000 per year as a tax deferment more than exemption. But that got canceled in the need for more money. That $50,000 is the region that for a small business that's starting up, they need the money. It's what they need to be able to hire 2 or 3 employees and grow a company instead of spending all the money they have and folding.
Mr. Jordan?
Well, I've been endorsed by the National Federation of Independent Businesses because I understand as a small business person myself that these regulations strangle companies. And that's what we hear constantly from constituents and businesses, is these regulations really mess up everything they try to do. But the problem is we don't know the specific regulations that they deal with. They need to come to us, and they have come to us because each term that I've been in Raleigh, we've passed major regulatory reform bills where we have put in a combination of regulatory reform that decreases regulations on a wide variety of industries because there are different issues depending on your industry, what things might you need done. For example, there are regulations on truck sizes, but when we have something like Hurricane Matthew, the farmers need to get their products in very quickly, and the governor was authorized by one of our regulatory reform bills to release those restrictions temporarily so that farmers can get their products in. So those are the kinds of things that constituents need to come to us and tell us that will really help us. Agriculture came to us and said they need that, and we put it in place for them. Scott?
I agree with Representative Jordan's been saying as well. I do think it's industry specific to some of the regulatory reform that needs to take place. I've spoken with restaurant owners who've struggled and feel strangled by certain, even the sales tax changes, or even the federal will come in and change tax rates. So I think there's a lot of heartache and heartburn with keeping up with all the different tax changes, and I think it's important to kind of streamline a lot of that and make that very clear. It's an ongoing process. It's not something that can happen overnight as well. But then I've also had friends that have opened their own business, from a pottery business to an event planning company, who have found opening their own company very user-friendly and very welcoming. So I think it really kind of depends on the industry that we're discussing as well. And I have been endorsed by the NFIB as well.
Mr. Sherman?
Obviously, nobody is for burdensome, cumbersome regulations. I was talking to a voter when I was working the polls yesterday, and he was talking about the smell from burning chickens. His neighbor who had a chicken farm. He said that didn't used to happen because we used to bury the chickens, and they can't do that anymore. Well, why is that, you suppose? He said, well, yeah, I guess it's getting down into the water. So there are unintended consequences. There is a need for good regulation. When postgraduate students come here from China to work, they're typically young people and family ready, young children, babies. What do they send back to China? They send back baby food, powdered milk. Why? Because the regulations here assure safe food supply. So clearly, I think we all agree there are some regulations absolutely necessary, but we want to minimize the burden as much as possible.
Ms. Counts?
Well, when I was county extension director, I worked with farmers, and there were a lot of regulations, and we need some regulations because of health and safety, but it should not be burdensome on our small farmers or our small businesses. So there needs to be a balance. And that's what we have to make sure that we have, because we want our small businesses and our small farmers to succeed. So I work toward that balance so that we don't have undue restrictions on our small businesses and small farmers.
All right, Representative Jordan, you will have the next question. Do you support raising teacher pay and per pupil funding to the national average?
Thank you for that question. I don't think we need to look at the national average. I think we need to look at our regional competitiveness with our neighboring states, because that's where a lot of the teachers that move because of family circumstances or other things go. They go across the border to our neighboring states. That's why what we've done, we saw a decrease in starting teachers. So under 2 phases, we increased starting teacher pay to $35,000. Now we're working on teachers with more experience and improving that. The last pay raise that we just put in this last budget was an average of 4.7% across the board. That was the average. They don't all get that, of course, depends on particular circumstances. But every teacher in both counties have gotten increases in their pay over the last several years. But there's more to do, obviously. It's going to take a lot of time and effort and funds to get there. We have done that. Every year I've been there, we've increased the pay, we've increased funding for education, and it's something that we've got a big hole that we have to dig out of from the Great Recession. And we're continuing to work on that.
Senator Ballard.
It's definitely been a priority, I know, in the short session that I've been there as far as raising teacher pay. And you'll notice that in the last budget that we did vote on, that starting salaries for teachers went from 33 to 35. And then, an average teaching salary would be nearly $52,000 in the next 3 years. So I do think that this is a priority, and I want folks to understand that we are trying our best to be effective with the funds that are there. I do think there's more work to be done. In fact, I'm actually, in the interim, I've been working on teacher recruitment working groups and teacher involvement, or enrollment. We've been meeting with different, college of education programs and how best to attract those teachers and and actually secure jobs for them in our public school system. I am a product of the public school system. I have had a teacher that has, my fifth grade teacher actually went from being a teacher to assistant principal to principal to a superintendent. So I think it's important that we are affording these guys leadership tracks, to continue for their own professional growth.
Mr. Sherman?
I don't know where to start on this. I entered this race because of the maltreatment of teachers. I think what it's really about is respect for teachers, because they are foundational to growth and development of our society. We need to compare, you asked about comparing to our neighbors. I think indeed we need to compare within the community, but what we need to compare to is professionals comparably trained to make sure that the teachers are comparably paid to people who are equally educated, skilled, and so on. This is one way of showing respect that's due to these teachers. And one evidence for the fact that we're not doing this well is the fact that the enrollment here at ASU and the Department of Education has gone down over the last 6 to 8 years, 35%. This is unacceptable. We need to change that. And if you think that we're doing a good job, or you wonder about the argument about over numbers, just ask any teacher.
Ms. Towns?
Okay, I've talked to a lot of teachers and over the last few months, and what Mr. Jordan said doesn't match the reality of what these teachers are experiencing. Our schools are underfunded, and our teachers are leaving to teach in other states for better pay. And if you live here in Watauga County, you don't have to go too far over to Tennessee to make $10,000 or more on the year. So if you really believe what has been said here about our public schools, you probably need to go talk to some more teachers.
Mr. Cecil?
In the last 50 years, I've listened to a lot of teachers. I have yet to hear one say he was overpaid or even well-paid. I've always heard from every school board that they need more money. So obviously, we're still short. You cannot pay to the average. You pay to what you can fund, you pay to what you need, you pay to what retains the teachers that you want to retain. And that's a difficult and long balance. There are a lot of numbers that we see thrown in the gubernatorial race on what the teachers are paid. You can look at the table and it says $50,000. You can look at the school board and they say, well, we pay an extra $10,000 locally. You can look at the value of the insurance and whatnot they get, and you see numbers up as high as $67,000 per year for a non-board teacher. So it's difficult. No doubt the teachers do need more money. We need more money in the classrooms for supplies and a lot of choices, but it comes down to funding. And I've looked at a lot of things on it, and it's going to be difficult.
All right, Senator Ballard, you'll get the start of the next question. What are the top issues you expect will occur in the next year's long session of the legislature?
I think education will continue to be a top priority. I think we're going to be looking at assistant principal pay and principal pay as far as education is concerned, and continuing to show our value and respect for their profession and for what they're doing. I think there's still a lot of work to be done in healthcare, a lot of reforms for Medicaid, discussions on CON and how that affects rural hospitals. So I definitely think those are kind of two hot topics that will be coming up. I do think there will be continued discussion on, our tax rates, how the sales tax is working, and how the businesses are, what does that look like exactly right now after we've implemented this plan, and how is that working? So I think there's just going to be a lot of, consideration given to what's already been in place.
Mr. Sherman?
I don't have the mind of the legislator, so I don't know what they think we're going to be doing, but I know some of the issues that are important. Obviously, education is the biggest part of the state budget, is always going to be an important issue. And again, as I said, it's foundational to our whole society, whole way of life, and has been for hundreds of years. It will keep on. Healthcare also, provision of universal healthcare is something that we need to move toward. The legislature and the governor could start by simply accepting the money that they left on the table to provide more coverage by accepting Medicaid expansion, something that we badly need to do. And if we pay attention to all the news, we know that healthcare insurance is a problem. We heard recently about the increase in the premiums that are coming down the pipe again, and it's going to hit us hard here. We need to redress that. We need to find ways to minimize that damage to our people.
Scott?
I think probably the top three will be education, healthcare, and taxes. Because I think with the taxes, if we worked on that, we might be able to really do a good job funding education. And I think that we need to use time and energy on the subject of healthcare. So those would be my top three.
Mr. Cease?
Definitely doing something for Medicaid. Hopefully, it's not through the medical or the federal version of it. We do something as a state adjustment to Medicaid. But we've got an aging population, and we've got a lot of baby boomers that are coming into the circle. So we're going to have to do something over the next 3 or 4 years to cover Medicaid. It's going up, and it's not going to stop. We need to do more funding for education. We need to assure the funding for the education. I think one of the primary ways that we can do that without throwing a lot of new taxes on everybody is to go ahead and authorize the medical cannabis. Let that group be taxed. That has worked out in other states to be a good source of revenue. It's only affecting the ones that are doing something with it, and it definitely will bring a lot of jobs into the state to do the growing and the processing, which is what we've done for decades with tobacco.
Mr. Jordan? Again, this is a question I wish we had more than 1 minute to discuss, but jobs and taxes will clearly continue to be an important issue that we'll work on. Taxes, even though we've given historic tax cuts in personal income and even corporate taxes, because this is how you encourage job creators to come, we have $151 million more in projected tax revenues than we had predicted. So that tax cutting helps the economy. Education will continue to be an important issue because, as I said, we're continuing to make strides in improving teacher pay and education funding. We spend $200,000 per classroom in education, but the teacher only gets that $40,000 to $50,000. Where's the rest of that? That's what we need to take a look at. Healthcare will be another big issue because that's constantly on the radar. We've made some improvements so that we're not continually funding cost overruns in the healthcare system. Every year we were voting for more and more money to go into this hemorrhaging system. And we don't need to expand it because there's already so much more waste, fraud, and abuse in it. But there's always going to be something I've discovered in my terms down there. There's always going to be a surprise issue that comes up. It was unemployment my first term. We had coal ash this last term. So there's going to be a surprise issue that none of us even can predict what we'll have to deal with at that time.